Latoya, do you have a comment about today's proceeding?
Hey, Latoya.
I just want justice. I want justice.
You're a wonderful lady, Mrs. Jackson.
Yes, you are. Wonderful mother. God bless you.
We just left from inside the courthouse. They just started the preliminary hearing on the wrongful death of Michael Jackson. They called two witnesses. One of the witnesses made a statement that while they were inside the residence, Dr. Conrad Murray asked them, did they know how to do CPR? And I wanted to make a comment about the defense's tactic. They're trying to say Michael self-inflicted himself with the propofol. That's ludicrous. That's ludicrous. The defense was totally, they had nothing to work with. They were fumbling over questions that were not being allowed. They were constantly being sustained because they're working with nothing. This case is not about whether Michael Jackson inflicted himself. This case is about physician negligence. Why was Dr. Conrad Murray there hired to take care of Michael and he didn't even know how to do CPR?
Right. Come on.
Our issue is this. He left Michael unattended. He should not have done that. So he did not meet the standard of care as far as the doctor. That's why we're here on trial. It has nothing to do with Michael Jackson self-inflicting himself with propofol. That's ludicrous, and that is not the issue for this court hearing.
That's right.
My name is Geraldine Hughes, and I'm sitting in to make sure that the public knows what's really going on inside the courthouse this time. I'm the author of Redemption, the truth regarding the Michael Jackson child molestation allegation. I've been following Michael's innocence since '93 and reporting the truth.
And you're invited by the family.
We did ask for a response from the family, and Catherine thought it was just ludicrous that the doctor did not know CPR. He turned to somebody else and asked them if they knew how to perform CPR. And he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know whether he was working on Michael or not. Pardon? He was on earlier, yeah, in the morning time. The comment that Ortega made was that they told him to butt out. They told him he didn't have anything to do with it. He was concerned about Michael's health and welfare, and they told him to butt out. He was not a doctor, and he shouldn't concern himself with those issues. Pardon? They basically laid the foundation as to what happened the night before. After he got to the Staples Centers, when he returned home, Murray was already there on the premises, but that they went on and left and went home. So no one was actually there at that time but Murray and Michael. The new news was that I was surprised to hear that Dr. Murray was seeking their advice to know how to do CPR. And they thought that they were shocked because they said he's a doctor. He's supposed to already know how to do CPR.
Mr. Muhammad is 23 years old. Mr. Alvarez is 34 years old. Mr. Williams is 26 years old. As you have seen or heard this evening, two of these three witnesses have testified about the truth that they know concerning the frantic last minutes of Michael Jackson's life. They ask one thing. Most importantly, they ask that they be left alone and be allowed to return back to their private lives, to their families, and to their jobs. These men have testified to the truth that they know, and they have been able to provide a human element to the frantic last minutes of Michael Jackson's life. They loved him, they respected him, and they miss him dearly. And they hope that justice prevails at the conclusion of this event. Any questions?
What did you think of some of the cross-examination or some of the questions?
I'm a defense attorney as well, and I can appreciate that at a preliminary hearing, the defense is duty-bound to try to question as broadly as they can and to pursue all possible theories for their defense. So I don't blame them for trying to throw as much as they could against the wall to see what would stick. The testimony was that when Mr. Muhammad came into the room, he was talking with Mr. Alvarez, and he heard Dr. Murray ask the question of whether they knew CPR. This was somewhat of a curious question that was being asked because Dr. Murray has specialties in cardiac arrest or as a heart doctor. So the very question was indeed unusual for Mr. Muhammad because he did not know CPR and Mr. Alvarez did know CPR. You'll hear tomorrow when Mr. Alvarez testifies about the steps that he did to try to protect Michael Jackson's life. You'll hear tomorrow when Mr. Alvarez testifies about his version of what happened when he first arrived at the room and then when his 911 call was made that has already been published. But it would be premature for me now to preview that evidence.
What's your take on these questions about fingerprints tonight?
It is another defense attempt to see where the evidence may lead. I think that once all of the evidence is understood and described, it'll be clear that none of these three gentlemen touched any vials of propofol or any other medication, and did only what was instructed of Dr. Murray at that time.
So what do you believe was the most important testimony you heard in court as a defense?
I think the most important testimony to me was the concern that Dr. Murray expressed after the death about returning back to the home to obtain the cream. I'm not sure what he meant, but it seemed to be a curious question to ask at that point, given the magnitude of events that had already transpired.
So do you believe that your clients believe that Mr. Murray was trying to cover up incriminating evidence before the
It would not be appropriate for me to interpret what the evidence is. What is most appropriate is that my clients are providing truthful testimony about what happened that day, and it's then left up to the judge to decide whether there is proper evidence to hold Mr. Murray for trial.
I noticed that when they were talking about the delay between the first statements that Michael and Mary made and they all just said it was 31st statement. Was there some time passed that they come to believe that Mr. Murray did act wrongly in the minutes?
There was news reports and various statements from Mr. Murray's counsel about what had happened that night, which differed from their recollection of the events, which really led to them seeking my assistance so that they could properly give their full version of the facts to the police investigators. They were concerned about some of the information they were hearing in the news media of what happened in the room and wanted to make sure that their version of the facts could be properly reported. Mr. Alvarez had only been interviewed briefly in the hours after his death, and he had critical information that he thought important that the investigators learn about. There has never been any suggestion to me that the police department's interest in Mr. Alvarez is anything other than a witness.
Anything that was made in the opening statement today that you and your clients disagree with or say was misrepresented?
Regrettably, I was not privy to that opening statement. We were somewhere else, so it would not be appropriate for me to comment on that. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Hi, my name is Geraldine Hughes, and I'm with the Jackson Truth. We're here to give you the true information concerning what's going on inside the courtroom. We feel like the truth needs to be told. They just did examination with Michael Amirs, and he really depicted what happened the night prior to the Michael dying, all the way to him returning back to his residence, all the way to when he first found out that Michael had passed. The prosecution did a good job at having him clearly articulate the events that led up to him knowing that Michael had passed. The defense, however, was trying to poke a lot of holes in his story, and they were mainly interested in what time he called the resident. They really tried to make a lot of point about he was him and Fahim, excuse me, forgive me for the names, the other two security gentlemen, like they were in cahoots in terms of giving their story. He was trying to mix them up a little bit as to his timeline, but he did an excellent job.
What's his name again? Michael?
Michael Amirs. He was Michael's personal assistant, and he was with him. He was usually always with him there at the house. He was with him when he went to the Staples Center for the rehearsals. He also would escort him all the way back to the residence, made sure that he got home safely, which he did that night. He went home, so therefore he wasn't there the morning that everything became very chaotic, but he was on the phone with, as a matter of fact, he said Conrad Murray called him first and told him it was crazy, he needed to get there. So we're starting to really get some clear information as to what happened up to the night before, the day of, and right after Michael was pronounced dead. He was actually at the hospital that day as well too. He made a very interesting point that Conrad Murray, minutes after after it was announced that Michael had passed, Conrad Murray wanted him to take him back to the house to get some cream that he said no one wanted to, that he didn't think anyone wanted to find. He also made a comment that he was hungry and he wanted him to take him to go get some food. Michael had just passed and Conrad Murray was hungry. So right now they've taken a break. We're going to reconvene back at 1 o'clock.
Who's there from the Jackson family?
LaToya's there, Jackie's there, Mrs. Jackson. It looks like a few more family members, but Mr. Jackson is not there. There's a snowstorm, and the highway wasn't safe for him to travel. So I am told that he will be there later on during the week.
Okay, thanks, Geraldine.
You're welcome.
Once again, who are you and what book did you...
I'm Geraldine Hughes. I'm the author of Redemption, but I'm here basically with the Jackson Truth, which is a true source of reporting that the fans will be able to hear exactly what is going on without being filtered, without being altered. You're going to hear the truth through the Jackson Truth. That's why I'm here reporting.
Justice for Michael! Justice for Michael! Justice for Michael! Justice for Michael!
Justice for Michael! Justice for Michael!